You wake up, and for a moment, you forget what day it is. Just a breath, a quiet moment before the world calls you again. And in that silence, a thought arrives. Not loud, just a whisper. What if you don't actually know what you're doing yet? Have you ever wondered why your 20s don't feel like freedom, but more like a question with no answer? Why do you compare where you are to where others seem to be? Why does someone else's success feel like your delay? And why does the future feel heavier than anything you've already lived? You scroll, you watch reels, feeds, stories, everyone moving forward while you feel paused. Not stuck, just unanchored. And here's the quiet part. Not the loud worry, not the panic, but the subtle truth you avoid. You're not here because you lack ambition. You're here because your mind doesn't feel safe with uncertainty. This isn't laziness. This is tension between what you thought your life would be and what it actually feels like right now. You avoid the question because the answer feels bigger than your breath. You think, maybe I'm just confused. Maybe I'm late. Maybe I picked a wrong path. Maybe everyone else knows something I don't. But what if the truth isn't about what you didn't choose, but about what you're afraid to face? You want to feel direction, but you keep replaying the same loops. Not because you're weak, but because nothing has given you a clear direction yet. Nothing has felt like a true fit. Like your life should start at this point. Not drift, not wait, not hesitate. You tell yourself, if I just get the right job, the right relationship, the right plan, then everything will make sense. And in that desperation lies the real question you avoid. Not, why is my life directionless? But, why does direction feel unreachable right now? You look at the future like it's a closed door with no handle. And when the future feels uncertain, your brain tries to take you back to what felt familiar. Back to memories, back to safer decisions, back to what you already know. Not because you want to relive the past, but because your nervous system is wired to prefer the familiar over the unknown. So ask yourself quietly, when did you stop living and start questioning? When did your 20s stop being a decade and become a slow exam where every choice feels like a test? This is the silence that most people avoid, not because they can't handle it, but because it feels like holding water with your hands. You think, if I look inside long enough, maybe I'll see what I'm missing. But deep down, you fear you'll see something even more uncomfortable. And that fear, that pressing, quiet, persistent feeling, isn't just anxiety. It's the question your heart won't stop asking. Who am I really, without all the expectations? Because life in your 20s isn't confusing because you lack clarity. It's confusing because you're in transition. You're still becoming. And the hardest part, you don't even know what direction feels like until you've felt lost enough to notice its absence. So here is the question you've been avoiding. The silent truth beneath the regret, beneath the comparison, beneath the anxiety. You're not stuck because your life has no direction. You're stuck because nothing has yet shown you a direction worth committing to. Most people imagine a crisis as something loud, a breakdown, a dramatic moment where everything falls apart at once. But the quarter-life crisis doesn't arrive like that. It arrives quietly. You wake up on an ordinary day, open your eyes, and for a few seconds, everything feels normal. And then, it happens. That familiar weight in your chest. Not sadness, not panic, just a dull pressure that makes getting out of bed feel heavier than it should. You go through the motions. You shower, you check your phone. You scroll without really looking. And somewhere between one post and the next, a thought slips in. Is this really my life right now? You don't say it out loud. You don't even fully think it. You just feel it. That quiet sense that life is moving, but you're not sure where you're moving with it. You see people your age announcing promotions, engagements, relocations, big plans. And you tell yourself you're happy for them, and you are. But underneath that happiness, there's another feeling you don't like to admit. A subtle comparison that doesn't sound like jealousy, but still hurts. It sounds like this. They seem so sure. Why don't I feel that? Did I miss something? This is where most people misunderstand what's happening to them. They think they're ungrateful. They think they're behind. They think they lack discipline or ambition. But the truth is simpler and heavier at the same time. You don't feel lost because you have no options. You feel lost because you have too many. Every path feels possible. And because of that, every path also feels risky. A job isn't just a job anymore. It feels like a statement about who you are. A relationship isn't just connection. It feels like a future being chosen before you're ready. Even small decisions feel loaded, because in your 20s, everything feels like it might define you. So you hesitate. You overthink texts before sending them. You delay decisions that other people seem to make effortlessly. You stay longer in situations that feel okay because choosing something new feels too final. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're trying to avoid choosing a life you can't undo. And that creates a strange emotional state. You're busy, but not fulfilled. You're functioning, but not grounded. You're moving, but without direction that feels real to you. That's why your days blur together. Not because nothing is happening, but because nothing feels anchored to who you truly are yet. And this tension leaks into everything. You want connection, but you pull back emotionally because being fully seen feels dangerous when you're not sure who you are yet. You want stability, but routine feels suffocating because it reminds you that time is passing. You want clarity, but you're afraid of committing to the wrong version of yourself. So you live in between staying and leaving, between trying and waiting, between dreaming and doubting. This is what people mean when they say their 20s feel empty, even when life looks fine on the outside. It's not emptiness, it's misalignment. Your inner world is changing faster than your outer life can catch up, and your brain doesn't like that. Because your brain is wired to look for certainty, patterns, and safety. And right now, your life doesn't offer clear signals of any of those things. So your mind starts looping. It revisits old decisions, old versions of yourself, old paths you didn't take. Not because you want to live in the past, but because the past feels knowable, predictable. The future doesn't. And when the future feels like a blank space, your nervous system treats it like a threat. That's why this phase feels exhausting. Not because you're doing too much, but because you're constantly carrying uncertainty without a place to put it. You're waiting for a moment where everything suddenly makes sense, a moment where you wake up and feel ready. But that moment rarely comes on its own, because clarity doesn't usually arrive before movement. It arrives after you've stepped into uncertainty long enough to learn who you are inside it. And that's the part no one prepares you for. That becoming comes before certainty, not after. Right now, you're not failing at life. You're standing in a psychological transition space. A space where identity hasn't settled yet, but the old version of you no longer fits. And that discomfort, that heaviness, that quiet questioning, that is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is changing. And to understand why this phase feels so intense, we have to look underneath it, at how the brain handles uncertainty, at why identity feels unstable in your 20s, at why freedom can feel heavier than limitation. You don't feel stuck because you lack motivation. You feel stuck because your mind learned how to protect you. Most people never realize this. They think their hesitation means something is wrong with them. But what's really happening is much quieter. Your nervous system is doing its job. It's trying to keep you safe. Not safe from danger in the streets, safe from emotional uncertainty, from regret, from choosing something that might hurt later, from becoming someone you can't undo. And that protection comes at a cost. Let's slow this down. Every experience you've had, every disappointment, every moment where something didn't work out, your brain stored it, not as stories, as sensations. Your body remembers how it felt to fail. It remembers how it felt to be rejected. It remembers how it felt to be unsure. So when you stand in front of new decisions, your mind doesn't analyze them logically first. It scans for familiar emotional patterns. It asks one simple question: have we been hurt like this before? If the answer feels even slightly close to yes, your system pulls back. You hesitate. You delay. You overthink. Not because you're weak, because your emotional memory is louder than your present reality. This is why you replay the past, not because you enjoy it, because your brain is trying to prevent it from happening again. And this creates what psychologists call an unresolved emotional loop. You keep returning to old moments, old conversations, old versions of yourself, because they never reached emotional closure. They stayed open, incomplete, so your mind keeps circling them, hoping to finally find resolution. But here's the hard truth. You don't resolve the past by revisiting it. You resolve it by changing who you are now. And most people never do that. They stay emotionally parked in the same place. Which brings us to something important: frozen identity. This happens when part of you is still defined by who you used to be, by who you thought you would become, by what didn't happen. Your life keeps moving forward, but internally, a part of you remains stuck in an earlier chapter. Maybe it's the version of you that believed everything would be clearer by now. Maybe it's the version that expected a certain relationship to last. Maybe it's the version that thought success would arrive faster. So now you live in two timelines. Your body is here, but your identity is still there. And this split creates exhaustion, because you're constantly carrying an outdated version of yourself into a present that no longer matches it. This is also why your 20s feel so heavy. Not because life is hard, but because identity is being rebuilt in real time. You're shedding one self while trying to grow another. That takes energy. And then there's something deeper. Why letting go feels psychologically terrifying. Because letting go doesn't just mean losing the past. It means losing the person you were inside that past. Even if that version of you was hurting, even if they were confused, they were familiar. And familiarity feels safe to the nervous system. The unknown doesn't. So your mind clings. It replays. It delays. It stays attached. Not because it wants suffering, but because it wants predictability. There's also something else most people don't see. When you don't know who you are becoming, staying connected to who you were feels grounding, even if it hurts. This is why people stay in relationships that no longer fit, why they stay in jobs that drain them, why they hold on to identities that feel too small. Because uncertainty feels more dangerous than dissatisfaction. And there's one more layer: avoidance of present responsibility. This part is uncomfortable, but it matters. Letting go of the past means stepping fully into the present. And the present demands something from you. It demands choice, action, ownership, direction. When you stay mentally in the past, you delay that responsibility. You can say, "I'm still healing. I'm still figuring things out. I'm not ready yet." Sometimes those statements are true, but sometimes they are protection. Because becoming requires risk. It requires you to move without guarantees. And that is terrifying for a nervous system trained to avoid pain. So instead, you stay in reflection, in preparation, in waiting. And waiting feels productive, but it's often just disguised fear. None of this makes you broken. It makes you human. You are navigating identity formation in a world that offers unlimited options and very little guidance. Your mind is overloaded. Your emotional memory is active. Your future feels undefined. Of course you feel stuck. Of course you hesitate. Of course your past feels louder than your present. But here's the shift. Your past does not need to be erased. It needs to be integrated. Your memories don't need to disappear. They need to lose control. And that doesn't happen through force. It happens through awareness. Which brings us to the final part. Not how to forget, not how to suppress, but how to change your relationship with what you carry. That's where we go next. So what do you actually do with all of this? Not in theory, not in motivational slogans, in real life. Because understanding why you feel stuck is one thing, living differently is another. And the truth is, moving forward in your 20s rarely looks like a dramatic breakthrough. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or sudden clarity. Most of the time, it begins quietly. It starts the moment you stop trying to fix your entire future at once. You've been carrying too much in your mind. Every possibility, every comparison, every version of who you could become. That weight is what exhausts you. So the first shift is not changing your life. It's changing how much of it you try to hold at the same time. You don't need to solve everything right now. You don't need a 10-year plan. You don't need to become the final version of yourself. You only need to take responsibility for what's directly in front of you, today. Not your whole identity, not your entire purpose. Just the next small, honest step. That might look simple from the outside. Waking up at a consistent time, taking care of your body even when motivation is low, showing up to work with presence instead of resentment, answering one difficult email, having one real conversation, going for a walk when your thoughts start looping. These are not small things. These are stabilizers. They give your nervous system something solid to stand on while the bigger questions slowly organize themselves. And here's something most people don't hear enough. You don't find direction first. You build it through motion. Clarity comes after action, not before. You learn what fits by trying things that don't. You discover who you are by living, not by waiting until you feel ready. Read that again. You discover who you are by living, not by thinking, not by planning endlessly, by participating in your own life. And this doesn't mean forcing yourself into paths that feel wrong. It means allowing yourself to be imperfect while you explore. It means letting yourself be a beginner. It means accepting that uncertainty is not a personal failure. It's part of becoming. Another quiet shift happens when you stop measuring your progress against other people's timelines. Some people find their direction early. Some find it later. Some change it multiple times. None of this means you're behind. It just means your path isn't linear. Social media makes it feel like everyone else has already arrived somewhere meaningful. But what you're seeing is a snapshot, not the full story, not the doubts, not the nights of uncertainty, not the internal negotiations they never post. Everyone is figuring something out. They're just doing it privately. So instead of asking, "Why am I not there yet?" try asking something gentler. What is my life teaching me right now? Maybe it's teaching patience. Maybe it's teaching boundaries. Maybe it's teaching resilience. Maybe it's teaching you what doesn't align, so you can recognize what eventually does. Growth doesn't always look like expansion. Sometimes it looks like refinement. Letting go of habits that no longer serve you. Letting go of identities that feel too tight. Letting go of expectations that were never truly yours. And here's something important. Moving forward doesn't mean you stop feeling uncertain. It means you stop letting uncertainty decide everything for you. You learn how to act while uncertainty is still present. You learn how to carry doubt without letting it freeze you. You learn how to build a life alongside unanswered questions. That's emotional maturity. That's what this phase is quietly teaching you. And slowly, something changes. You start noticing moments of calm where there used to be constant tension. You begin to trust yourself a little more, even when you don't have all the answers. You become more selective with your energy. You stop explaining yourself so much. You choose environments that support who you're becoming, not who you were. And one day, without any dramatic announcement, you realize something subtle. You're no longer waiting for your life to start. You're already inside it. Not perfect, not finished, but moving, breathing, evolving. And that's enough. Your 20s are not meant to be a polished masterpiece. They are meant to be a draft, a living sketch, a period of experimentation, correction, and self-discovery. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to grow slowly. You are allowed to outgrow versions of yourself. You are allowed to take time. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling lost. It means you're in the process of becoming, and that process doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence, for honesty, for courage in small, ordinary moments. So if you're watching this and quietly wondering whether you're doing life right, let this be your reminder. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to keep showing up. One choice at a time, one day at a time. Your direction will emerge from your movement. Your identity will form through experience, and your sense of meaning will grow from the life you actively participate in, not from the one you wait for. You are not late. You are not broken. You are becoming, and that is exactly where you're supposed to be.